Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Annabeth, Clarisse and Thalia? Part 1. Huge shout out to UbberFox for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. As she strode through the forest, a woman made her way towards the Valley of the End, her heart heavy with anticipation. It had been 15 long years since she last saw her beloved son, forced to leave him behind in the elemental nations due to the ancient rules of her realm. This was her only chance to bring him home, to reunite him with her siblings and be together as a family before her husband notices her absence. But suddenly, she froze in her tracks. A powerful energy was emanating from not too far away. It was one she knew all too well, the Kyuubi no Yoko, the creature that had nearly destroyed Konoha 15 years ago. Without hesitation, she rushed towards the source, her heart pounding with fear and hope that her son was safe. The Valley of the End. Naruto had reached his limit. Time was running out for him after his intense battle against six-paths Madara and the sealing of Otsutsuki Kagaya using the Fuinjutsu Shiki Fujin. And yet, despite everything he had been through, the team had the audacity to claim he would reform the world by killing the 5 Kages trapped in the infinite Tsukiyomi and sealing the tailed beasts within himself. Naruto's heart pounded with anger and disbelief at the team's words. How could he possibly think that taking such extreme actions would bring about any kind of positive change in the world? Naruto knew that he couldn't let the team succeed in his twisted plan. In a desperate move, Naruto appeared before Sasuke in a bright yellow streak, catching him off guard for a moment. It was all the time Naruto needed to slap his hand on Sasuke's stomach and start pulling his soul away from his body. What are you doing, dope? Sasuke exclaimed in alarm, feeling his arms and legs go numb. Naruto said nothing as he absorbed Sasuke's soul completely, leaving his lifeless body to fall to the ground with a thud. Exhausted from his battle with Madara, Kagaya, and now Sasuke, Naruto collapsed to his knees. Despite the weight of what he had just done, Naruto knew it was necessary. Killing Sasuke, his former teammate and friend, was part of the job. He lowered his face to the ground, finally giving in to his exhaustion and closing his eyes. Suddenly, a woman appeared beside Naruto's unconscious body and knelt down to check if her son was okay. To her relief and joy, she realized that Naruto's state was due to chakra exhaustion. She gingerly picked up her son, holding him in a bridal style. Without hesitation, she opened a portal in front of her and stepped through it, eager to tell her husband about their son's heroic accomplishments. After a few hours, Naruto finally opened his eyes, narrowing them slightly from the morning sunlight. Memories of yesterday flashed through his mind, giving him a headache. Suddenly, Naruto sat up in alarm and scanned the room he was in. He was in some sort of hospital room, except it was made of gold. The room somehow glowed faintly, and Naruto could feel the temperature rising slightly before dropping. He could feel his body healing slightly when the room glowed suddenly. The door of the room opened, and 3 people entered with a leisurely pace. The first person was an extremely handsome, tall, muscular man with bronze-colored skin and long golden hair that was tied into a bun. His eyes shone as if they were the sun itself. He was wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and loafers. The second person was also a man, very tall, imposing, and very muscular, with shoulder-length black hair and a grayish-black neatly trimmed beard. He had electric blue eyes with a serious and proud expression, along with an extremely handsome face. With Naruto's super smell nose, as he dubbed it, he could smell ozone rolling off of the man. He was wearing a dark blue pinstripe suit. The third person was a woman. She was beautiful, Naruto could tell that, with long licorice black hair and a face of regal and unapproachable beauty, like that of a supermodel on a fashion runway, and large, soft brown eyes that one could get lost in. Dressed in a glowing white gown, with a pea feather cloak over her shoulders and a golden lotus top staff in hand, she wore a gold crown and belt of pea feathers. As the trio approached Naruto, he took a fighting stance, feeling power radiating from them, especially from the man with electric blue eyes and the woman whose gaze held nothing but love and adoration. Despite his suspicions, the woman rushed forward, tightly wrapping her arm around Naruto's neck and pressing her weight on him. Tearfully, she exclaimed, "Sniff my precious Achi, sniff. Welcome home, my son." Naruto was shocked because as far as he knew his mother died protecting him along with his father from Kurama in its berserker mode because of the Uchiha. His face turned emotionless, and he harshly unwrapped the woman's hand, backing away to create some distance between them. Unintentionally, he missed the hurt look in their eyes. "Hey, come on bro, it's not cool to brush off your own mother," chided the man with golden hair. "Who are you? Stop fooling around. My mother died protecting me Kyuubi all those years ago. You're telling me my mother is alive right in front of me?" Naruto said harshly. He can't help it. He rarely spoke about his parents, not because he hated them, but because it was a touchy subject for him. His friends in Konoha were aware of this. The black-haired man spoke softly, "Naruto, it's complicated," wincing inwardly as his wife flinched. Naruto glared at them before stiffening for a moment and bolting out of the room faster than his Hiraishin, almost knocking the trio off their feet. "Sachi, wait." The black-haired woman cried out, but he paid no mind as he ran out of the temple's door. The sight he saw almost made him stumble, it was the most beautiful place he had ever seen. The architect had done an excellent job here, mused Naruto. Some of the buildings were surrounded by clouds, and there were various temples around. His musings were cut short when he felt arms wrapped tightly around his neck, a body pressing against his back. He went stiff and tried to reach for his kunai pouch. "Naruto, please, I'm your mother. Listen to me, please. You'll understand everything," he heard the woman say. Seeing the woman's pleading eyes, he reluctantly agreed. Sigh. "Alright, I'll hear your so-called explanation. You have 5 minutes to tell me who you are and where we are," Naruto said firmly, never letting his guard down. The woman grabbed his hand and gently dragged him to meet his family. She led him to the throne room, as she called it. After waiting a few seconds at the giant door that could rival the Konoha gates, they entered the room to see several giant people in their giant seats. Seated in their respective giant chairs were a group of powerful individuals. The first man sat next to a man with striking electric blue eyes. He was tall, handsome, and laid back, with neatly trimmed black hair and a sea-green gaze. He wore a Hawaiian shirt, leather sandals, and khaki Bermuda shorts, accessorized with a cap decorated with fishing lures, which read Neptune's lucky fishing hat. His deeply scarred hands like an old-time fisherman. Beside him was a large, deformed man with bulging, misshapen features. He had one shoulder higher than the other, and a creaking steel brace supported one of his legs. His wild brown beard sparked fire from time to time, and his red, lumpy face was covered in welts, as if he had been stung by a million bees. He donned a jumpsuit with the name Hephaestus embroidered over the chest pocket. Next to him was a muscular man with curly black hair, elfish features, and a sly grin. He wore a sleek suit and a winged sports jacket. Beside Naruto was a man he recognized from the infirmary. The man's cheerful smile was blindingly bright, causing Naruto to wince as some of the light shone directly into his eyes. On the left side of the group sat a woman with licorice black hair, whom Naruto knew. Next to her was another woman, her long blonde hair resembled ripe wheat, and she wore a bright green dress with a dark cape. She also had a crown of woven corn leaves and adornments of poppies, and smelled of rain over a field of jasmine. Next to her was a woman in a long white sleeveless dress, holding a glowing spear and shield, exuding the energy of a warrior. Her stormy gray eyes shone with fierce determination. Beside her sat a stunning woman in a red satin dress, with hair curled in a cascade of ringlets and mesmerizing spring water eyes. Sitting next to her was a girl of around 12 or 13, with auburn hair tied back in a ponytail and silver yellow eyes as cold and bright as the winter moon. In a normal-sized chair sat a tall, graceful woman with gorgeously braided dark hair, copper-colored skin, and a silver circlet. Her cold eyes were fixed on Naruto. Beside the hearth sat an 8-year-old girl with mousy brown hair and a simple brown dress, wearing a scarf over her head. Naruto noticed her warm and cozy red flame eyes. Next to her sat a very tall, imposing, and muscular god with albino white skin, black glittering eyes that were either the eyes of a genius or a madman, shoulder-length black hair, and a beard. He wore black flowing robes with soles threaded into the cloth and iron gloves. The room, for the better lack of word, was in chaos. "Zeus, why have you summoned us here?" "I am busy with paperwork," Poseidon complained. "If you just shut up for a moment, squid head, then father can't tell us why we are here," Athena interjected. "Shut your mouth, Owl Pellet. Why don't you read some nerdy books, huh, Athena?" Poseidon retorted. "Why you?" Demeter began to speak but was cut off by Zeus. "Hey Artie, I have a new haiku for you. Do you want to hear it?" Apollo interrupted. "For the sake of all of us, Apollo, no, I do not want to hear your stupid haiku, and do not call me Artie." Artemis replied. "Breath, bring back my precious daughter," Demeter pleaded. "How many times do I have to tell you, Demeter? She is safe in the underworld," Hades reassured her. Naruto watched the scene with a sweat drop until Zeus slammed his lightning bolt into the ground, silencing the bickering gods. In the distance, Naruto could hear thunder booming. Suddenly, Zeus bellowed, "Silence." And everyone immediately quieted down. All eyes turned to Zeus, who looked upon Naruto with a fatherly love. Seeing Zeus's eyesight, they finally took notice of Naruto. Hades and Poseidon regarded Naruto warily, as his appearance was almost identical to Zeus's for their liking, which made them uneasy. Apollo gazed upon Naruto with a goofy smile, while Hermes observed him curiously. Hephaestus took a keen interest in Naruto's kunai pouch. The females also had various reactions over him. Hera, his mother and wife of Zeus, looked at her son with love and care. Demeter looked at him for a moment, then muttered, "This man probably eats cereal for his good looks," which made him sweat drop. Athena looked at him with calculating eyes. She noticed that he was dressed like a ninja and became curious about whether he was really a ninja or not. Artemis looked conflicted. She felt indifferent about the man, but she couldn't help feeling connected to him regarding her domain, the moon. She would have to ask him about it later. Aphrodite looked at him with lust, which creeped him out a bit. She could see how his tight tank top showed off his muscles, and she drooled a bit. She would try to seduce him after the meeting was over. Zoe looked at Naruto with a cold look because, to her, all boys were disgusting like pigs. I have summoned all of you here because I have an announcement to make. This boy standing here is the son of Hera and me, and he is the Prince of Olympus, Zeus declared proudly. His siblings and children, except for Hera, looked at Naruto in shock. They couldn't believe that they had another brother. Poseidon looked at his brother with approval in his eyes. At least Zeus kept his oath, and only Chaos knew how much of a headache it would be if another demigod of Zeus appeared. Hades looked indifferent about the situation, no doubt thinking about his children's safety at Lotus Casino. Apollo and Hermes looked at Naruto with mischievous glints in their eyes, thinking about causing chaos with their new little brother, or as Apollo decided to nickname him, Lil Fish Cake. Hephaestus looked at his new brother with a slight hopeful gleam in his eyes, hoping that their new brother would not treat him like the rest of his siblings. Hera looked at her son with motherly love. Demeter was staring at her nephew, and she could feel nature's energy coursing through his body. She wondered if he was a sage and decided to ask him later. Artemis glances at him with question in her eyes. So can you explain to me where we are and who you are? Naruto asked cautiously, still not trusting them. Well Naruto, before the QB attack, your mother and I had a strained relationship. So we decided to start a new chapter. We went to the Shinto pantheon and asked Lady Amaterasu for permission to enter her pantheon and become mortals. Lady Amaterasu gave us permission with rules, of course. The rules were that we could not tell the mortals in that world that we are gods and goddesses. After a few years, our relationship became better and better through the years, and we had you, Naruto. After the QB killed our mortal bodies, our godly souls came back to Olympus. We tried to go to the Shinto pantheon to bring you to Olympus, but the Shinigami came to us and said that you died from the corrosive QB chakra. We were broken to hear about your death. That is until recently when Lady Amaterasu came to us and explained that she and Lord Chaos are your great-grandparents. They chose you to be the child of prophecy in the Shinto pantheon. You were destined to bring peace to the elemental nations, Naruto, and for that, we are really proud of you, Zeus said proudly. Who wouldn't be proud? His son is the child of prophecy that brings peace to the world. Oh, he couldn't wait to rub this fact in his brother's face. Naruto was shocked once again. He knew the prophecy from his mentor Jiraiya, but he didn't believe in such a prophecy. His head was swimming right now. First, a goddess appeared in the elemental nations, and now the gods and goddesses are real. His head was throbbing right now, and he couldn't take it anymore, so he fainted right in front of the gods and goddesses in the throne room. Naruto. Naruto woke up with a killer headache, he sat up on the bed and massaged his forehead. Then the memories of last night came rushing to him, his parents were gods, Greek gods more specifically. He then noticed black hair tressed over his bed, he looked sideways to see the same woman resting her head on the side of the bed. He recognized her, she was his mother, he gently and slowly got off the bed, not wanting to wake up her. He walked out of the room and started wandering around the street. The place was beautiful, no doubt about it, with mountain peaks covered in snow, huge palaces clinging to the mountains, and clouds hovering above them. Naruto wandered through the market as he saw people selling swords and shields. In another part of the market, there were young teenage girls with green skin. They would shyly look at him with a dreamy expression, and some drool would come out of their mouths, freaking him out. This reminded Naruto of his fangirl club back in Konoha after he defeated Pain. They would stalk him all day long with the same expression. Naruto shuddered and increased his pace. He walked to the edge of Olympus, his eyes widened as he realized just how high he was above the ground. He was so mesmerized by the beautiful scenery that he didn't notice someone standing beside him. Beautiful isn't it, a voice said behind him. He turned around to see the gray eyes of the woman he saw in the throne room. She gave him a curious look, her black hair swaying slightly to the side. Yes, it is, replied Naruto. Are you a shinobi? She asked curiously. Why do you ask? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow at the question. Does shinobi does not exist around here? I notice the way you dress, your weapons, and your defensive stance whenever you feel threatened. She said. Well miss, I don't think we properly introduced ourselves. Naruto said. She blinked rapidly for a few moments before she extended her right hand. Right, I am Athena, the eldest daughter of Zeus. I am the goddess of wisdom, strategy, arts, crafts and battles. Naruto took notice daughter of Zeus part and grasped her hand firmly before replying, I am Uzumaki Naruto, ex-Anbu captain, and Roku Daime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sado. Athena's eyes lit up with curiosity as she leaned forward. Can you tell me more about your village? She asked eagerly. Naruto, seeing no harm in it, he told her about his village. How the village was founded by the first Hokage, along with the Uchiha clan leader, how the ninja village works and the different ranks of ninja in the force. Athena was astounded at the stories he told her. She couldn't believe the village was founded only by 2 leaders. She was impressed with Hashirama's hard work and vigor, but the naivety he had for Madara slightly disappointed her. She believed that Madara needed to be watched 24/7, which would have saved them from Madara's betrayal. She nodded approvingly at Tobirama's observation skills and the precautions he took regarding him. Athena was further amazed when Naruto described the battle between Hashirama and Madara. Controlling wood was one of the most dangerous abilities out there, just like her Aunt Demeter did whenever she got into it. Madara's visual prowess slightly scared her because eyes that could predict her next move was not something she wanted to face in a fight. Can you tell me more about the gods in this realm, Athena? Naruto asked her, as it was very bad for any ninja to not know his surroundings. Sure, well, there are the big 3, she began. Zeus, your father, is the lord of the sky, god of honor, justice, rain, sky and lightning, as well as the king of Olympus. Next is your uncle Poseidon. She said the name with venom, and although he raised an eyebrow in response, he remained silent. He is the god of the sea, storms, earthquakes, droughts, floods, soil, and horses, king of Atlantis, the earthshaker, the stormbringer. And finally, eldest of the all. Hades, god of the dead and wealth, lord of the underworld. Though he does not have a seat in the Olympus, he only comes here during the winter solstice or any emergency meeting. Naruto also raised his eyebrow at that, realizing that his uncle did not have a seat on Olympus. After them come the younger gods, Hephaestus, god of fire, forges, sculpture, metalworking, stonemasonry, carpenters, metallurgy, artisans, and volcanoes, lord of craftsmen and smiths, blacksmith of the gods, he is your full-blood brother. After him is Hermes, god of messengers, travelers and thieves, god of roads and merchants, trade and sports and border crossings, the messenger of the gods. Next we have Apollo, god of archery and healing, music and poetry, prophecy, light, art and oracles, the god of sun. Ares is the god of war, violence, battle, lust and rage, he is also your full-blood brother. Why do I have feeling me and Ares are not going to be the best brothers around here? Thought Naruto. And finally we have Dionysus, god of the vine, grape, harvest, winemaking, wine, madness, religious ecstasy, theater director of Camp Half-Blood, and member of the Council of Cloven Elders. Camp Half-Blood. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. As for the goddesses, you already know your mother Hera, the goddess of marriage, home, and family, the queen of heaven, and the goddess of childbirth, the queen of Olympus. Next is your Aunt Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, fertility, sacred laws, harvest, and seasons. The next one is your half-sister Artemis. She is the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, chastity and maidenhood, also the goddess of the moon, forests, hills, and archery. Next is Aphrodite, she said with a slightly disappointed tone. She is the goddess of love, beauty, lust and sexuality, desire and pleasure. And the last one is Hestia, your aunt, she said fondly. It was no secret that all Olympians, except Ares, cared for her. Like Hades, she doesn't have a throne. She sits at the sacred hearth tending the flame all the time. She is the goddess of the hearth, home and family. He smiled slightly at that. At least they have a family goddess. I like the last one, though, she raised an eyebrow. And why is that? Family, he said with conviction in his tone. Seeing her confused look, he explained, family is important to a shinobi because of our dirty work, it haunts you throughout your life. Family, friends, and comrades will help you cope through it. Once you put the headband, your age doesn't matter, you can drink, kill and have sex, having a someone saves you from getting lost. Athena nodded at that logic. Sometimes even adults have traumatic events about their work that make them quit the military. With this ninja law they could cope with it. And besides, family is something I treasure the most, he said firmly and softly at the same time, and it was true. He didn't have a family when he was a child. That is a very good ideal, Naruto, a melodious voice said behind him. He turned and saw an 8-year-old girl with warm and cozy red flame eyes staring at him with adoration. She smiled at him warmly, which made him smile back at her slightly. Aunt Hestia, what can I help you? He said softly to her. Hestia smiled warmly at him for a moment. Your mother has been searching for you all over Olympus. I think it's better for you to come to Hera's temple before she tasks a search party, she chuckled along with him. Alright, lead the way, Aunt. Throne room. My baby. As soon as Hera saw her son walking in with Hestia and Athena, she lunged at him and held him tightly, afraid that if she let him go now, he would disappear again. Tears of happiness cascaded down her face as she held her son. Hey mom, Naruto-san said somewhat reluctantly. She understood why he hesitated to say that, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Yes, my baby boy. It's your mother, she backed away slightly to put her hand on his cheek, staring at him with love and adoration. Zeus came forward and patted his son's shoulder gently as he smiled at him. "Hey Dad," he said as his father smiled softly at him. "Welcome to Olympus, my son," his father said before he hugged both his mother and him in a family embrace. Hestia smiled happily at the scene. She was happy because her brother and sister reunited with their son. She couldn't wait to talk about family with her nephew. Hera's temple. Naruto sat on the chair beside his mother and father as he told them about his life, how he became a genin, who his sensei was, and how the village treated him. His mother cooked her special homemade ramen for dinner, which was the best ramen he has ever tasted. While his parents smiled at him the whole time, in their minds, they were furious at the village's treatment of their son. Zeus shook his head at Kakashi's neglect of Naruto's training for the Uchiha during the Chunin exams, while Hera snarled at that. It took all of their willpower not to go to the village and bring it down to dust. After dinner, he went to sleep in the room his mother had prepared for him. The room had a cozy feeling to it and he slumped on his bed, tired from all the talking with his parents. Mindscape. Naruto stood on the grassy ground of his mindscape, looking around. His mindscape had changed. No longer was it the sewer with drained pipes, but it had been replaced with a big forest, and every tailed beat has their own little terrains, but for now they were sleeping after the whole war facade. "I have been waiting for you," a raspy voice spoke behind him, and Naruto turned around so fast it could make Hiraishin look like a ninja's play. He saw an old man with a kama using it like a cane. His body was old and puny, with white spiky waist-length hair and a bang of hair that covered the right side of his face. Naruto's eyes widened. "Madara," Naruto hissed loudly as he took a fighting stance. "Please, Uzumaki, hear me out first," wheezed out Madara. "Why should I do that?" Naruto growled at him. Madara was the reason for all the problems in the elemental nations. If he had just died at the valley at the end, things would have gone peacefully. "Then listen," Madara said before he quickly explained, seeing Naruto's demonic rage. "I am dying, Uzumaki. After I became Kagaya's vessel, I saw everything Black Zetsu did. He is the one who killed my brother Izuna and manipulated both the Uchiha and the Senju clan to battle each other. I was blinded in my brother's death to see that, which eventually led to my eternal doom. I am supposed to be dead right now." "Then why are you here?" Naruto demanded. "Your grandparents sent me here to train you as a way to atone for my sins," Madara confessed. Naruto's eyes widened. His grandmother and grandfather sent Madara here to train him. "So, Naruto, will you accept my training?" Madara requested, almost pleadingly. Naruto said nothing as he pondered this. It would be good to learn new techniques as he only knew various forms of Rasengan, but on the other hand, he would be learning under a man who had killed many of his friends. Pondering on the situation for a few moments, he looked at Madara in the eye with fierce determination. "When do we start?" "Yancy Academy." Naruto sat beside Percy with an annoyed expression on his face that Percy shared. Naruto was doing his best to calm down his rage as Nancy Bobafett threw peanut butter and jelly at Grover, who acted as if nothing had happened for the sake of his friend. It had been 2 years since he had come to this world, and learning a new language was not a problem for Naruto, thanks to his Rin Sharingan. After accepting Madara's offer to train under him, his jutsu arsenal had greatly expanded, and his chakra control was astounding. He had mastered all 5 chakra natures and his Susanoo. Naruto was wearing a high-collar black jacket with a pair of jeans and black tactical boots he got from his brother Hermes. On his wrist was a gauntlet-like firearm hidden by a gain jutsu he put on. His white, spiky waist-length hair had been tied up into a bun, a bang of hair that covered his right eye swaying slightly. His eyes had changed into warm and cozy red flames. After 5 years of training in his mindscape, his body had changed. His muscles were stronger, and his skin was unbreakable, as if it was the Nemean lion skin itself. His eye color changed to red flames due to his Aunt Hestia's blessings. Percy was wearing white shoes, blue jeans, an orange shirt, and a gray jacket with a hood, and Grover was wearing a t-shirt, oversized pants that hid his legs, and shoes. After he woke up from his mindscape, his parents were shocked by his transformation. He told them everything from Madara to the 4th Great Shinobi War. They were shocked to hear that he was trained by Madara Uchiha, whose strength rivaled that of the Shodaime Hokage. After that, Naruto started spending all his time with his family. He helped his father with paperwork, helped his mom cook, chatted with his lovely Aunt Hestia, helped his brother Hephaestus at the forge, much to his brother's enjoyment, raced on foot with Hermes across New York, learned Haikus from Apollo, hunted with Artemis, played shogi with Athena, farmed with his Aunt Demeter. Tortured some people with his uncle, and kept company with his half-sister Persephone, and fished with his uncle Poseidon. Dionysus was too busy to hang out with him as he was the director of Camp Half-Blood, and Aphrodite just wanted to get in his pants, which Naruto always avoided as much as possible. Ares had nothing to do with him. Just a few months ago, his uncle visited him on Olympus. His uncle requested him to protect his son Percy, and his reward would be a blessing over his water chakra nature. Right now, the trio was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art to learn about Greek mythology. Athena had pretty much told him everything about the Greeks, but he was just here to protect and escort his uncle's son to Camp Half-Blood. "I'm gonna kill her," Percy muttered lowly. "It's okay, Percy, I like peanut butter," Grover said, but Naruto could see he was lying. He had to tilt his head to the side for a bit to avoid peanut butter thrown at him by Nancy. "That's it," Percy growled out as he started to get up, but Grover kept him down. However, Percy swore he saw Naruto's eyes turn red for a second before it disappeared. "Remember, you're already on probation," Grover reminded Percy. "You know who will get blamed." Percy smirked almost evilly as he nodded his head towards Naruto. Grover turned to look at Naruto and shivered. Naruto had an evil, mischievous, and prankster glint in his eyes as he stared at Nancy almost predatorily. Despite everything Grover almost felt sorry for the girl, knowing how brutal Naruto pranks were when he really got into it. "Hey Nancy," Nancy heard her crush call out to her, making her look at him and shiver. That look in his eyes made her scared and a bit turned on. "Yes." Nancy squeaked out as she trembled under his powerful stare. "Stop throwing things at Grover, or I'll make you do it," he said, though he growled out at the end. To Nancy, although she shivered from the stare she got from Naruto and his infamous pranks, that growl made her knees weak and a drop of liquid streamed down her thigh. "Oh okay," she meekly said. Percy whipped his head at his friend so fast that Grover thought Percy's head was going to snap. How the hell did their blonde friend make the meanest bullies in the school have a crush on him? They would never know. Mr. Brunner, in his wheelchair, led the museum tour, guiding the group past the impressive gallery featuring marble statues and glass cases, brimming with old black and orange pottery. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle internally at the sight of the orange pottery, his favorite right color. He glanced over at Percy and nearly burst out laughing at his bewildered expression. The boy seemed unable to grasp the fact that these ancient artifacts were still in such good condition. "Dude, close your mouth. Are you waiting for flies to take shelter in there?" Naruto teased. Percy's face turned scarlet and he quickly snapped his mouth shut with an audible click. "Sorry," Percy stammered. "It's just this stuff is really old." "Well, when you put it that way, I guess it is old," Naruto quipped, "but at least it's interesting." Percy just stared at him. He knew his blonde friend was a Greek mythology nerd who always had his nose buried in a book on the subject. Turning their attention to Mr. Brunner, the group went quiet, listening intently as the man began to speak about the ancient gods and goddesses. He had gathered them around a 13-foot column with a large sphinx perched atop it, and he proceeded to tell them that it was actually a grave marker, a stele. As he spoke, they took note of the intricate carvings around the sides. Naruto noticed Percy paying closer attention than before, but the people around them wouldn't stop chattering until Percy finally told them to be quiet. Naruto then noticed Ms. Dodds, the annoying math substitute teacher, giving Percy an evil eye, as if expecting him to cause trouble at any moment. This made Naruto wary of the teacher, as he could sense the hatred and malice rolling off of her, thanks to his ability to sense negative emotions. He decided to keep an eye on her, and Grover noticed this and nodded in agreement. Mr. Brunner continued talking about Greek funeral art and Nancy blabbered on about a naked man on a stele. This was the final straw for Percy, who snapped and literally yelled at her to shut up. "Mr. Jackson," Mr. Brunner said, "do you have a comment?" "No, ma'am," Percy replied, embarrassed by his outburst. Naruto shook his head, he was about to cast a genjutsu on the annoying girl, but Percy beat him onto it. The man on the wheelchair pointed at one of the picture on the stele and asked Percy what it is. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, though he looked unsatisfied with the answer. "Can you tell me why?" Seeing his friend struggling to answer, Naruto decided to save his friend. Kronos didn't trust his children because of the prophecy which stated that one day his children will do the same thing he did to his father Uranos. He explained as Percy let out a relieved sigh. The Titan Lord ate all of his children, with the exception of Zeus, Ray the Titaness of motherhood, as well as wife to the Titan Lord tricked him into eating a rock instead of Zeus. However, years later, Kronos hired young Titan by the name of Zeus, an actual god in disguise, as his cupbearer. Kronos was very entertained by the latter's excellent singing, dancing and sadder jokes. Thereafter, Zeus would encourage the Titans to participate in drinking contests. As the Titan King, Kronos would always win, since he couldn't let his siblings, nieces or nephews overcome him in anything. One evening when Kronos was dining together with his brothers and nephews, Zeus prepared a special set of drinks for them all. Zeus prepared nectar mixed with a sleeping potion to Kronos' guests, while he prepared an extremely powerful the end of the grand banquet. Zeus encouraged all of the Titans to have yet another drinking contest and handed out the prepared goblets. As before, Kronos won the contest, but the emetic caused him to disgorge all his swallowed children, and since Kronos' siblings were knocked out by the sleeping potion, they were not able to stop the gods from escaping. All 6 of Chrono's divine children quickly declared war against their father and other titans, which resulted in the terrifying 11-year-long Titanomachy. Chronos, their brothers and their children initially had the upper hand in the battles, since they were very skilled and much more experienced warriors. However, the gods quickly became skilled warriors as well, and with the help of their new extremely powerful weapons, Zeus's Master Bolt, Poseidon's Trident, and Hades' Helm of Darkness, and the aid of the Elder Cyclops and Hecatonkers, the gods finally prevailed. In the aftermath of the battle, the titans were all chained up by the Elder Cyclops, after which the Hecatonkers forced them to kneel before the gods. Zeus proceeded to take his father's sickle and slice him into 1,000 pieces, just as the Titan Lord had done to his own father, before casting him into Tartarus, along with his brothers Hyperion, Krios, Koios and Iapetus. Only Chronos' mighty former second-in-command, Atlas, received a different punishment, as he was forced to hold up the sky while being chained to the ruins of Mount Othrys. Seeing the stunned look of Mr. Brunner along with Percy and the other students, Naruto couldn't help but smirk at them. His father has told him this story 100 times already. Excellent. You did well. Praised Mr. Brunner. He then looked at his watch on that happy note. It's time for lunch. Ms. Dodds, would you let us back outside? The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs and the guys behaving like idiots. The trio of friends were about to follow the group outside when Mr. Brunner said Mr. Jackson. Percy told Naruto and Grover to keep going as he approached Mr. Brunner, whatever the man was gonna tell him. Sir, Percy asked as Mr. Brunner has this look like he already knows more than he lets on. Perseus, you must learn the answer to my question. About the Titans? Asked Percy. About real life and how your learnings apply to it, he said. Oh. Percy mumbled, though Percy had a sinking feeling the man was not finished yet. What you learn from me, he started, is vitally important, and I expect you to treat my teachings as such. This made Percy a bit angry at the man. Sure, he was cool in the class when he started to those tournaments, but he always pushed Percy a bit hard. Percy mumbles something about trying harder next time before leaving. Mr. Brunner looked at the girl on the stele sadly before he sighed and rode out of the museum. None of them noticed a pair of rippled eyes with Adamo watching their every movement before fading into black lightning. The class gathered on the front step of the museum, where they could watch traffic flooding the Fifth Avenue. The boys noticed the clouds brewing and storming in the sky, with thunder booming loudly. Hey Naruto, what do you think is going on? With the weather and all? Naruto gave Percy a deadpan look while he groaned internally. He had learned from his mother that the sky always react like this whenever his father would throw his infamous temper tantrums. What could make dad this mad? I don't know, Percy. The two boys, Percy and Naruto, joined Grover at the fountain and sat down to eat. They had chosen a spot further away from the others so no one would bother them. Percy didn't like being in school, he thought it was for freaks. Naruto didn't care for a civilian school because he was a ninja, but they didn't need to know that. Detention? Asked Grover. Nah, Percy said. Not from Mr. Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius. Naruto chuckled and said, maybe you're related to one of the Greek gods, Percy. Maybe that's why he's interested in you. Percy laughed heartily at Naruto's joke, while Grover nervously laughed. After that, they became quiet for a bit. Grover asked Percy for one of the apples, and Percy gave it to him. Percy seemed deep in thought. Thinking about your mom? Naruto asked softly, seeing the boy nod. Yeah, we're kind of close to her place. I hope she's okay. I mean, she's been living with Gabe, after all, Percy said, a little angry that his mother was living with Gabe. Percy, I'm sure she's okay. I mean, she's put up with that pig this far. I still don't know why she married him though, Naruto lied. He knew exactly why Percy's mom married Gabe. To wash Percy's demigod scent. It was rather impressive that it only took this smelly Gabe to wash Percy's big 3 demigod scent. Naruto had watched over Percy's family and secretly sent money to his mother with Hermes' help. Every time he watched over them, he had to control himself from killing Gabe and dumping his body in the sea. Percy nodded and was about to unwrap his sandwich when Nancy Bobafett and her annoying friend came over, dumping her food at Grover. He and Percy glared menacingly at her. Oops, she drawled out as she grinned at Percy, as if expecting him to start causing trouble. Naruto could tell that Percy was pissed and was trying to calm himself, failing miserably. Then Naruto noticed the water at the fountain rose up and pushed Nancy onto her butt. Percy pushed me. She screeched. Ms. Dodds came over and glared at Percy, as if she already knew he was going to cause trouble. They heard whispers around them, and apparently, not only Naruto saw that. After Ms. Dodds checked Nancy to see if she was hurt, she turned to Percy and said, now, honey. But Percy cut her off. I know. A month of erasing the class board, Percy grumbled, though that was not the right thing for him to say. Come with me now, she ordered him. Grover cried out, wait. It was me who pushed her. Percy was stunned that Grover was trying to take the blame for him, and Naruto smiled softly at Grover's action. Ms. Dodds glared at Grover menacingly until his chin trembled. No surprise there, since he was a satyr, he could feel the hate. "I don't think so, Mr. Underwood. But you will stay here," she said with anger, each word making Grover cower under her glare. "It's okay, man," Percy reassured his friend while Naruto patted his shoulder. With that, he took off, but not before giving Nancy a dirty look while Naruto's eyes gleamed as he glared at her. She noticed this and shivered as a blush took her cheeks, feeling aroused under their powerful stares. They turned to look at Ms. Dodds and saw she was already at the entrance of the museum. Percy wondered how Ms. Dodds got there so fast, while Naruto narrowed his eyes, sensing hate and malice from that old hag. Silently, he followed them from the shadows. Percy followed Ms. Dodds as she led him through the museum. He wondered if she was going to make him buy Nancy a new t-shirt to replace her wet one, but that thought quickly dissipated as they passed the gift shop. They walked until they reached the Greek and Roman gallery of the museum. Percy heard Ms. Dodds growl as she looked at the marble pictures of the Greek gods. "You have been causing trouble for us, boy," she said, causing Percy to look at her oddly. He wondered if Ms. Dodds had found out that he was selling candy in class. "Ma'am, I don't understand," Percy said, but Ms. Dodds hissed loudly, "Your time is up." She began to change, her eyes glowing like barbecue coals, her fingers stretching into talons, and her jacket melting into large leathery wings. Percy gaped at her for a moment before making a run for it, stumbling to the ground as Ms. Dodds lunged at him. He raised his arms in the hope of reducing the pain. Shinra Tensei, almighty push. Suddenly, an invisible force struck Ms. Dodds, and she was thrown across the room and disappeared in a golden dust. The force was so strong that it made the gallery wall fall off along with the marble picture of the Greek gods. Percy turned his head slowly, seeing Naruto standing behind him with his palm facing the direction where Ms. Dodds had been. Naruto's red flaming eyes had a ripple with an Adamo pattern in them. Naruto's sweat dropped, realizing that he really needed to practice chakra control when he got to Camp Half-Blood. "Naruto, what was that?" Percy asked dumbly. "I don't have time to explain, Percy. I'll tell you later. For now, let's go," he said firmly, putting his hand on Percy's shoulder, and they disappeared in black butterflies. They arrived just in time for Chiron to see the destruction that had been left behind, along with the butterfly. He narrowed his eyes, wondering who could cause this much damage. "I have to report this to Olympus," he thought to himself. After the incident with Ms. Dodds, things went back to normal as if nothing had happened for the rest of the year. Percy was a bit put off because of that. It was like Ms. Dodds never existed before, and in her place was a 21-year-old Miss Cammy. Miss Cammy was a sight to behold with shoulder-length blonde hair, soft lips, a cute button nose, and onyx-colored eyes. She usually wore a tight tank top that showed off her amazing bust with a red jacket, a pair of tight jeans, and sneakers. The first time she was there, the males all but drooled at her, looking at her with lust and need, while the girls begged for beauty tips. She seemed to have developed a crush on a certain spiky white-haired whisker-marked teen, Naruto, who was none the less oblivious about the fact. Naruto always wondered why she paid more attention to him while blushing like crazy, and why the girls, including Nancy, glared holes at their math teacher. Though everyone seemed not to know what the hell they were talking about, Grover seemed to know something because he always hesitated before changing the topic. He was such a bad liar. Naruto's red flame eyes glinted evilly at the thought of teaching Grover how to lie perfectly. A few days later, the biggest tornado had been spotted at Hudson Valley, touching down only 50 feet away from Yancey Academy, which was scary itself. Luckily, no one was hurt. Percy started to feel cranky and irritable most of the time. His grades fell from DS to FS, and he almost got into more fights with Nancy Bobafett and her friends. Fortunately, Naruto stopped him from doing so. Naruto also felt his emotions out of control, but unlike Percy, who didn't have sage training, he had a better way to control his emotions. Something odd was going on, and somehow it affected them. It was annoying them, none more so than Naruto. Naruto has decided that once he sent Percy safely to Camp Half-Blood, he will go to Olympus to check what the hell is going on. Though when Percy got in trouble by calling their English teacher an old sot, whatever that meant, the school sent a letter to his mom telling her that Percy was not allowed to come back next year. Naruto sensed the boy's mood rise a little bit. The boy was homesick. No surprise there. Speaking of home, Naruto frowned, thinking about his family. After spending time with his family, his mom and dad, he had asked them to be sent back to the elemental nation to release Mugen Tsukiyomi, Infinite Tsukiyomi. After he had done that, he sealed Sasuke's body and left a note for Bachan of what had happened. He hoped they had been doing great. Naruto sighed as he was brought back to reality. Exams had come up this week, just like him, Grover, and Percy. They had to study. He really needed Athena's help in the civilian school system. On the night before their exams, Naruto and Percy had decided to study at Percy's dorm. Throughout the night, Naruto noticed Percy becoming increasingly agitated. Just wait for it, Naruto thought humorously while mentally counting down the time. Finally, Percy threw his book across the room in frustration. Anger won't help you in this situation, Percy. Just stay calm and take a deep breath, Naruto said sagely, trying to lift the mood. Sorry, but how the hell am I supposed to know the difference between Chiron and Charon? Percy asked in exasperation. Not far away, a horseman sneezed violently, startling Grover who was outside his room. In Los Angeles, a man with shades also sneezed violently before he glared menacingly into space. Naruto sighed and sat up with crossed legs. The difference is, Percy, Chiron is a centaur and trainer of great heroes, while Charon is a man who guides dead souls past the river Styx and is highly paid, Naruto explained. Percy blinked as he stared at his blonde friend oddly before shaking his head. I'm going to ask Mr. Brunner for the rest. He might have a way for me, Percy said, getting up to get his book. Naruto just chuckled. They walked downstairs to the faculty offices, most of which were dark and empty, but Mr. Brunner's office was ajar, with light spilling out across the hallway floor. As they approached the door, they heard voices from inside. Mr. Brunner was asking Grover about Percy. I'm worried about Percy, sir, Grover said. He will be all alone in the summer. Kindly ones are there in the school we know for sure, and they know it too. We'll only make matters worse by rushing him. We need Percy to mature more. But he may not have time. The summer solstice deadline. Grover trailed off. It will have to be resolved without Percy, Mr. Brunner said. Grover, let Percy enjoy his ignorance while he still can. Sir, they saw her, Grover said urgently. Their imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted. The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince Percy of that. Sir, I can't fail my duties again, Grover's voice choked with emotion. You know what that would mean. You haven't failed, Grover, Mr. Brunner said kindly. I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just keep Percy alive until next fall. The mythology book Percy had brought with him fell to the floor and all went silent. Percy hastily grabbed the book as Naruto held Percy's hand and they disappeared in a swirling vortex. Mr. Brunner came out of the door to see nothing and somehow he was taller than before. Nothing, Mr. Brunner muttered. My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice. Mine neither, Grover said. But I could have sworn go back to the dorm, Grover, Mr. Brunner told him. You've got a long day tomorrow. Don't remind me, Grover whined as he headed out. Even though we have to watch Percy, there's something off about Naruto, Mr. Brunner thought to himself. The boy is strange, that's for sure. I can sense power in him, but not the demigod powers. But at the same time, he smelled like a fox. No matter. I have to watch them both. Percy's dorm. In the swirling vortex, Naruto and Percy emerged. Naruto landed on his feet while Percy's face introduced itself to the ground. Naruto casually dusted off imaginary dust on his shoulder while Percy held his stomach, groaning in pain on the ground. How the hell did you do that, Naruto? Groaned Percy as he held his stomach to keep from puking his dinner out. Naruto chuckled at Percy's condition. You'll get used to it. He said as he used Iryo ninjutsu, healing jutsu, on the boy's stomach, making him sigh in relief. Hey, Naruto. Can you stay for the night? Percy asked. You're the ninja here, I mean we have a better chance of surviving if we stick together. Naruto sighed. He had already told the boy about his power and chakra, just the basics of how he ended up in this world. Of course, Naruto lied to him a bit about how he got here, as he didn't want the boy to freak out knowing that gods existed. Fine with me, I just hope you survive the exams, he teased Percy. Percy paled and hung his head as he was reminded about the exams and why they went down in the first place. I am so screwed, Percy muttered. Naruto patted Percy's shoulder, hoping to comfort him. After Percy said that, Grover came walking in as if nothing had happened. Hey guys, how are you guys doing with your studies? Percy just hung his head in depression and didn't say a word. Hey, you okay, Percy? Grover asked worriedly. Suddenly, Naruto smirked as he had already made plans for the exams. The next day, they finally finished their 3-hour Latin exam. That was true hell back in there, muttered Naruto darkly as he rubbed his sore hand from writing so much. Phew, glad I passed that exam, Percy sighed in relief, even though his hands were sore. Naruto had come up with an idea to help Percy with his dyslexia. He created a wristband with heavy fuinjutsu seals and attached it to Percy's wrist. The wristband allowed Percy to see what Naruto saw since Naruto did not have dyslexia. Percy was grateful for Naruto's ninja awesome idea, as he called it. Mr. Brunner called Percy back in, and with his sensitive hearing, Naruto overheard him say, Percy, don't be discouraged about leaving Yancey. It's for the best. Percy was confused and asked, what do you mean? Mr. Brunner continued, I guess this is not the right place for you, Percy. It is only a matter of time. Percy felt his anger boiling inside of him. Mr. Brunner was his favorite teacher in this dump of a school, and in front of the whole class, he was telling Percy that he couldn't handle it all. No, Mr. Brunner quickly said. Oh, confound it all. What I'm trying to say is you're not normal, Percy, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. Thanks a lot, sir, Percy blurted out, feeling hurt. For reminding me. Percy, Mr. Brunner called out, but Percy was already out of the door. On the last day of the term, Naruto watched as Percy shoved his clothes into his suitcase. They listened to the other guys bragging about where they were going for the summer. Naruto was annoyed because every girl at Yancey had given him a parting gift, but most of them were love-shaped chocolates, and they had given him a kiss on the cheek before running away blushing like crazy. His substitute teacher, Miss Cammy, gave him her phone number and told him that if he ever had problems with math, he could call her for more lessons. Naruto just shrugged before she pecked him on the lips and ran away like the other girls. My home is in the city for the summer, Percy replied. Same here, Naruto stated as he approached Percy from behind, scaring him since he hadn't heard his footsteps. When did you get here? Percy asked as the other guy flew out. Just a moment ago, Naruto said as Percy nodded. So, remind me again why I'm going with you to your place. Naruto asked. Well, you could tell that I've been a bit peeved lately, and you're a great help when I'm in a bad mood. Trust me, I needed to face Gabe again, Percy told him. Great, Naruto commented, then his red flame eyes flickered excitedly. Hey, you know what? My house is not too far from yours, so maybe we can hang out more. Great idea, Percy smiled a bit at the idea. His friend always had his own unique way of lifting people's spirits. Percy was dreading on how to say goodbye to Grover, but luckily for them, he was on the same bus with them. Throughout the bus ride, Grover had been fidgety and looking around here and there, as if expecting Ms. Dodds to come back from the dead to kill them. Looking for the kindly ones. Percy was getting annoyed by Grover's behavior, and Grover jumped in his seat. Well, what do you mean? Percy confessed that they had overheard him but left out the part about Naruto being a ninja. Grover twitched. How much did you hear? Oh, not much, Percy told him. What is the summer solstice deadline? Grover, what are you not telling us? Grover fidgeted under Naruto's red flaming eyes. His eyes seemed to change color from red to blue to black and red again. Grover winced. Look guys, I'm just worried about you hallucinating about a demon math teacher. Grover, tell us what's going on, Naruto said the last word deeply. While on the inside, he was laughing like a madman. Of course, he already knew all of this, but he wanted to test Grover a bit. From his shirt pocket, he fished out a couple of grubby business cards. Just take this, okay? Just in case you need me this summer. The card's lettering was in fancy script, which was a murder in Percy's dyslexic eyes, but he managed to read it. Grover Underwood Keeper. Camp Half-Blood, Hill, Long Island. New York, 800-009-0009. What is it? Percy began, but Grover yelped, don't say it out loud. It's my summer address. Naruto inwardly groaned, realizing that Grover was terrible at lying. He needed to teach him how to lie if they wanted to survive. Percy felt a pang of sadness at the realization that even Grover had a summer camp, but he was glad that Naruto was sticking with him. At least this summer wouldn't be boring with Naruto's ninja tricks around. Okay, Percy said glumly. So it's like if I want to visit your mansion. Grover nodded. Or if you need me. Why would I need you? Percy harshly asked, making Grover flinch, while Naruto watched the commotion with narrowed eyes. Grover blushed. Look, Percy, I sort of protect you. This made both boys look at each other oddly. Most of the time, they were the ones protecting him. Grover, what exactly are you protecting me from? Percy asked, but before Grover could answer, there was a huge grinding noise under their feet. Black smoke poured out of the dashboard and the bus filled with a rotten egg smell. The driver cursed loudly as he pulled over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes of clanking around the engine compartment, the driver told them to get out. They found themselves on a country road with nothing but maple trees and litter from passing cars on the bus side of the highway. Across 4 lanes of asphalt, shimmering with the afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. Naruto noticed that the fruit stand sold all the good stuff. The fruit looked fresh and appetizing, and 3 old ladies under the shade of a maple tree were knitting the biggest sock he had ever seen. The lady on the right was knitting one of them, while the left was knitting the other. The lady in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. They looked ancient, with faces wrinkled like fruit leather and silver hair tied back with white bandanas. Their bony arms stretched out of bleached cotton dresses. Curious, Naruto approached the 3 ladies with a leisurely pace as they watched him. Excuse me, can you sew my headband? I'll pay you, he said as he fished out a roll of dollars from his frog wallet, making the 3 ladies giggle. He took out his mentor Jiraiya's headband. After he defeated Pain, Konoha had sent a group of Anbu to search his body. Along the way, they found his torn and hole-riddled headband. Tsunade gave it to him as a memorial for his mentor. Sure, dear. And please call me Atropos, the lady with the scissors said. And to answer your question, yes, dear, we can fix that headband for you. Please call me Lachesis, the lady who held 2 metal rods said, smiling at him. How about we do this for free, only for you, my dear boy. And call me Clotho, the lady holding the big ball of yarn said, smiling and winking at him. Naruto happily handed the headband to the ladies as he read the scroll about seals. On the other side, Grover was gaping at him. His face was as pale as the moon itself, his body trembling, and he was shakingly pointing his finger at Naruto. Percy looked at Grover oddly, wondering what the problem was with Naruto going to the old ladies to repair his headband. Here you go, dear, and please be careful with it, said the ladies as they handed the headband back. Percy's house. Sally was a stunningly beautiful woman with sparkling blue eyes that changed color in the light, a smile as warm as a quilt, and long brown hair with a few streaks of gray. She also had a scent of chocolate, licorice, and everything else one would find in a candy shop. Her bright eyes, quick smile, and sense of fashion made her look younger, despite the gray streaks in her hair. Currently, she was on the floor holding her reddening cheek, courtesy of her abusive husband, Gabe Ugliano, hitting her when he was in a bad mood or drunk. He had hit her like a whore, simply because she had watched the news that Yancy Academy had been hit by some deranged man, and they showed footage of the smoldering academy. The feeling of dread filled Sally as she hoped her son wasn't one of the victims. Before the reporter listed the names, Gabe had changed the channel, not really caring if some kids had died. Sally quickly snatched the remote from Gabe and changed the channel, but to her relief, her son wasn't among the victims. This action, of course, completely pissed off Gabe, and he promptly smacked her across the face. You cunt, he snapped in a fit of rage. He quickly grabbed Ally's shirt and ripped it. You need to learn your place, you bitch. Me and my friends are going to make sure of it. He unbuckled his pants and brought out his disgusting manhood, along with his friend. This is the scene Percy stumbled upon. He was shocked that smelly Gabe would go this far to hurt his mother. Get away from my mom. He roared, but he suddenly stopped as he saw Naruto standing behind Gabe, stabbing him through his chest with a weird, long-looking needle sword. His other friend was already dead on the ground with holes in his chest. Fufu, abusing a woman is a little too far, don't you think? Naruto whispered in Gabe's ear as his face set into agonizing pain before he fell to the side. Mom. Percy quickly rushed to his mother as Naruto took off his high-collar jacket to cover her modesty. Tears swelled in Sally's eyes as Percy hugged her, trying to comfort her. Naruto was on the other side, tears trailing down his cheek like small black flames, as the pig and his friend were engulfed in black flames and burned into ash. There was nothing left behind. Naruto then introduced himself. Hello Ms. Jackson. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm your son's friend. Thank you for saving me, Naruto, and please call me Sally, she said. Thanks, Naruto. Percy sent his blonde friend a grateful look, though he was silently disturbed by the black line like blood on his friend's cheeks. There's no need to thank me, Percy. Now, Ms. Sally, I assumed you already know who Grover is or what he is, Naruto said firmly. Sally nodded, confusing her son in the process. Percy, I know you have questions, but not right now. We'll explain to you later, Naruto continued, which made Percy frown a bit but nod. Is there any place that we can stay for a while? Naruto asked. Yes, Montauk. My mom and I have been planning to go there for a while, Percy answered him. Naruto nodded at that. Right now, a place near his uncle's domain was the best thing they could do for now. Who knew what his father would do if he knew Percy existed in this world? Naruto groaned inwardly at that thought. Well, he was not in the Olympian Council or anything. His mother would always drag him into attending the meeting, as family bonding she would call it. He would rather drink tea with one of his favorite sisters, Persephone in the underworld, rather than listening to the childish bickering of the gods. Once they arrived, Naruto couldn't help but smile. He loved places like this away from the cities, with fresh air and a spectacular view. It was a complete change of scenery. They were currently sitting around a small fire, roasting hot dogs and marshmallows. Mom, what was my father like? Percy asked, as he literally knew nothing about his biological father. He was kind, Percy's mother told him. He was tall, powerful, and handsome, but also gentle. You have his black hair and his green eyes. She pulled a blue jelly bean out of her candy bag. I wish he could see you, Percy. He would be so proud. Percy took on a sad expression while Naruto got lost in his own memories. Since arriving in this world, Naruto's mother hadn't stopped showering him with love, along with his father. He couldn't help but smile slightly at that thought. Now he had a really big family to take care of and being taken care for. It was the best feeling for someone like him, having a family which dotes on you all day long. How old was I? Percy asked. I mean when he left me. She watched the flames. He was only with me for one summer, Percy. Right here, at this beach in this cabin. But he knew me as a baby. No, honey. He knew I was expecting a baby, but he never saw you. He had to leave before you were born, she explained. Then she turned to Naruto. Naruto, what were your parents like? Naruto just smiled sadly, and his red flame eyes dimmed a bit. I never knew my parents. Right after I was born, my hometown was breached by an unknown man. After my birth, the man held me hostage, threatening to kill me if they didn't give him my mother. My father managed to save me, but they took my mother. Later, the man's intentions became clear. He wanted a weapon from our family. He managed to obtain our weapon and destroy half of my hometown. Then he tried to kill me, but my parents sacrificed themselves to protect me. Since then, I have no family, he told them sadly, though he sugar-coated the version of events. Sally's eyes welled up with tears while Percy looked at his friend in shock. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry for bringing up those bad memories, Naruto, she said, her voice filled with regret. Don't be. I moved on from that a long time ago. My godfather and grandfather took care of me before they passed away, he told them, but he hid the fact that both his godfather and grandfather were killed in action. Percy, after recovering from his shock, had a sad expression again. He didn't know if he could handle loneliness like Naruto could. Are you going to send me away again? Percy asked. To another boarding school. She pulled a marshmallow out of the fire. I don't know, honey, her voice was heavy. I think we have to do something. Because you don't want me around? Percy asked, but he regretted his words as soon as they left his mouth. Her eyes welled up with tears. She took his hands and squeezed them tightly. Oh, Percy, no. I have to, honey. It's for your own good. I have to send you away. Because I'm not normal? Percy asked. You say that as if it's a bad thing, Percy, but you don't realize how important you are. I thought Yancy Academy would be far enough away. I thought you would finally be safe. Safe from what? Percy asked. I guess that will be enough for today, Ms. Jackson. For now, let's rest before heading out tomorrow, Naruto said suddenly, not wanting the Percy to know more. Sally nodded and led her son to his room, while Percy felt frustrated that he couldn't get the answer, but decided to let it go. Naruto watched them go before heading to his own room to get some sleep. Morpheus's realm. Buildings were on fire and few were collapsing. Bodies, blood and marks of battles in the area could be seen. Naruto looked around, not sure what's happening. He then found himself standing outside of a purple barrier and along with a couple of people. Looking them over, he found a familiar ash-gray hair clad in what he remembered as Junin uniform, then his eyes widened in realization. Kakashi. He now realized he couldn't move his body. All he can do was watch just as a wave of water appeared inside of one end of the barrier and rushed to the other. Looking at the rushing water, he found out why. It was the third Hokage, who was wearing his black suited armor. He held his summoning partner, Monkey King Enma, in his bow staff form. Naruto looked at the other side and saw something that made his blood boil. Orochimaru, the once third student who turned traitor for experimenting on people and attempting on making a jutsu that cost someone else's life, smirking evilly at the old Hokage as two people fought the latter. Both had armor but different in color. He identified the first one with long black hair was Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage, and the other as Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage. Summoned by Orochimaru to fight against his former teacher and possibly kill him. He heard a roar and saw a giant sand tanuki making its way to Konoha on the forest, but before it could so much take another step, another giant being appeared. This one was different. It was a giant eight-tailed octopus bull who now started fighting the one-tails. Suddenly an ominous feeling as the scent of death started to appear. Naruto, well, he wasn't exactly real in this, felt a chill down his spine and saw the Shinigami semi-transparent form behind the Hokage and its arms going through the latter's gut and holding Orochimaru's and the two undead Hokage's soul. If I cannot stop you here now, then I will take what's most precious to you, Orochimaru. Hiruzen declared. The Shinigami forcibly ripped the undead Hokage's souls, leaving two dead bodies of sound ninjas in its place. Orochimaru fought back but only lost his arms, forever destroying his chance to learn any more ninjutsu. The scene changed in a funeral, dedicated for the third sacrifice for the village. Everyone was wearing black clothing as two elders, the third's advisors, gave parting words. Naruto stared at the now dead Hokage's face. Hiruzen was smiling, happy to die for protecting the people of the village he loves. Tears made its way to his eyes as he silently mourned at the death of grandfather figure. Then everything went black. Naruto woke up in a cold sweat, trying to calm his rapidly beating heart. He still remembered that day as if it were yesterday. Hiruzen's death had affected him greatly, sacrificing himself for the safety of his village. He looked at his nightstand and saw Hiruzen's headband, which he kept as a memento. He picked it up and walked out of the cabin, heading towards the beach. Sitting cross-legged, he took a deep breath and looked up in the sky, gazing the star-filled beauty. He closed his eyes, listening to the calming sound of the sea waves. While Naruto tried to calm his body, he didn't notice a man emerging from the water in front of him. Unbothered, the man simply stood there, and he too listened to the sound of calming waves. When finally Naruto opened his eyes, he was startled to see him. A huge merman, much larger than the rest, with the upper body of a tall and muscular man, a long green beard and hair, and horns resembling those of a bull. "How can I help you?" Naruto asked politely, his body tensed and ready to fight if this man proved to be a threat. The man smiled. "Calm yourself, Naruto Uzumaki. My name is Asinus, the Titan of the Ocean, the eldest Titan and father of the waters. My sister, Rei, has told me a lot about you, so I wanted to meet you." Naruto's eyes widened. Grandma spoke about me, but he inwardly groaned. Ever since he met his grandmother, Rei wouldn't let him go, wanting to keep him close so she could rub his whisker mark like some plush toy. He was not a plush toy or a pet, thank you very much. Asinus chuckled, having heard that his sister wouldn't stop talking about her cute grandson. His wife, Tethys, had been wanting to meet the boy, but fortunately for Naruto, she had to visit Amphitrite as usual. "Well, Naruto, I won't be taking much of your time as I'm only here to give you my blessing," Asinus spoke as he placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder, causing him to glow brightly for a second. "What exactly are you giving me?" Naruto asked curiously. Asinus smirked. "Naruto, I have given you hydrokinesis and atmokinesis, which will allow you to control water and storms easily. I have also strengthened your Titan blood and energy. With 6 more blessings, you will become immortal," explained Asinus. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck nervously, shyly staring at the Titan. "Wow, I don't know what to say, but thanks," he politely thanked the man as he nodded. "Until next time, Naruto," Asinus said, dispersing into a glob of water. Naruto chuckled at that and walked back to the cabin. Inside the cabin, there was a pounding on the door. Ms. Jackson sprung out of her bed, rushing toward the door in her nightgown, and unlocked it. Grover stood at the doorway against the pouring rain. "I've been searching all night," he gasped. "What were you thinking?" Ms. Jackson looked at them in terror, not at them, but at why he had come. Percy looked shocked for a moment, dumbfoundedly staring at Grover's legs. Instead of normal legs, Grover had goat legs. "Percy?" His mother shouted at him. "What happened at school? What didn't you tell me?" "Ozu Kaialoi Theoi," Grover yelled. "It's right behind me. Didn't you tell her?" "Are you talking about Ms. Dodds, Grover?" Percy asked Grover under the rain, making his mother widen her eyes. Sally grabbed her purse and threw Percy and Naruto rain jackets. "Go to the car, all of you, go." Grover trotted towards the Camaro, shaking his shaggy hindquarters in the process. That would explain why he ran so fast and limped when he walked. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he activated his Rinnegan. He could sense monsters from miles away. He needed to be careful in his surroundings. The group drove through the night along a dark country road. The wind slammed against the Camaro, and rain lashed against the windshield. Percy looked at Grover oddly when the lightning flashed, and he saw his best friend's donkey legs. Meanwhile, Naruto sighed, wondering what had made his father so mad as to create such a wild weather. "So you and my mom knew each other?" Percy asked, trying to break the tension. Grover's eyes flitted to the rearview mirror, even though there were no cars behind them. "Not exactly," he said. "We didn't meet in person, but she knew I was watching you." "Watching me?" "Keeping tabs on you, making sure you were okay," he explained. "But I wasn't faking being your friend. I am your friend." What exactly are you?" Percy asked. "That doesn't matter right now." "Doesn't matter?" "From the waist down, my best friend is a donkey." Percy pointed his finger at Grover. "Donkey legs." Grover let out a sharp throaty blah ha ha. Naruto could sense that Grover was annoyed by Percy calling him a donkey. "Goat," he cried out. "What?" Naruto decided to help him out. "Percy, Grover is a satyr. Half human and half goat." "What? But you mean, all that Mr. Brunner stuff was true?" Percy asked. Naruto gave his friend a deadpan look. "No, Percy, I was talking about how Ms. Kami kissed me." His sarcastic remark made Percy blush in embarrassment. "Wait, so Mr. Brunner taught us all that stuff to actually prepare us for this?" "Pretty much," Grover said. "Not only that, but those 3 old ladies were the Fates, and not just Miss. And neither was Ms. Dodds." "So you admit they're indeed a teacher, Ms. Dodds?" Percy exclaimed. "Of course. So what was the point of hiding the fact that she was real?" Percy asked. "The less you know, the fewer monsters you attract," Grover explained. "We put the mist over mortal eyes, hoping you would think the kindly ones were a hallucination. But you're starting to realize who you are." Wait a minute, what are you talking about?" Before Grover could even answer, a weird bellowing noise rose up behind them. It was getting closer. "Percy," his mother said, "there's too much to explain and not enough time." We have to get you to safety." "Safety from what?" Percy asked, alarmed. "Who's after us?" "Oh, nobody much," Grover said, still a bit miffed about the donkey comment. "Just the Lord of the Dead and his bloodthirsty monster." "Grover." "Sorry, Ms. Jackson. Could you drive faster, please?" Grover said while Percy tried to wrap his head around this fact. His mother made a hard left, swerving through narrower roads, racing past farmhouses and wooded hills, and a pick-your-own-strawberry sign on a picket fence. "Where are we going?" Percy asked. "The summer camp I told you about," his mother's voice was tight. She was trying, for Percy's sake, not to be scared. "The place your father wanted to send you. The place you didn't want me to go." "Please, dear," his mother begged, "this is hard enough. Please try to understand. You're in danger." "Because some old ladies cut some yarn?" Percy asked. "Percy, when the fates cut the thread, it means someone is going to die," Naruto bluntly explained. "Exactly," Grover said. "The fact that they appeared in front of you, they only do that when someone is about to die." "Whoa, you said you," Percy freaked out. "No, I didn't. I said you like someone, not you," Grover clarified. "Boys," Sally said as she pulled the wheel hard right and they caught a glimpse of a figure as she swerved to avoid it. The dark flittering shape was now lost in the dark storm behind them. Naruto unsealed the Kusanagi sword in his hand. He had taken the sword from the snake-faced pedophile after killing him. He truly hoped that sword does not smell like saliva. "We're almost there," Sally said, her voice filled with desperation. "Please, please, please, please," she chanted. There was a lightning flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and the car exploded. Percy pried his forehead off the driver's seat in front of him as his mother called out to him. "Ugh, I'm okay." They noticed the car was somehow still intact. Percy shook Grover off. "Grover. Dude," he groaned. Naruto's sweat dropped. "Percy," his mother said, her voice faltering. When the lightning flashed, they saw a huge figure through the mud-splashed window. "Boys," she said in a deadly tone, "get out of the car." She tried to get out through the driver's door, but the mud blocked her way. The passenger sighed, "Get out and run to the big tree," she yelled, pointing at the tree ahead as the three of them quickly got out. "What?" Percy said, confused, until the lightning flashed again, revealing a large pine tree. "That's the property line," she said. "Get over the hill and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Do not stop until you reach the door. Mom, you're coming too." Her face was pale and her eyes were as sad as when she looked at the ocean. "No, Percy," she shouted. "You're going with them. Help me carry Grover." Naruto created a clone and the clone picked up Grover. "Percy, go with my clone. You too, Sally. I'll hold him off." Percy nodded, looking at his mom. "Naruto, don't. He's a monster," Sally said, worry and concern shining in her eyes. Naruto smiled slightly. "Don't worry about me, Ms. Jackson. I have experience fighting monsters," he said as she reluctantly nodded and ran off with Percy and the clone carrying Grover. Suddenly, the huge figure appeared in front of Naruto. He had fur from his belly button up and was naked except for a pair of bright white Fruit of the Loom underwear. Naruto took a fighting stance, gripping the Kusanagi sword tighter as he formed a plan. He knew the bullman's sight and hearing were terrible, so he must be relying on his sense of smell. He grinned as he unsealed a smoke bomb. As if on cue, the Minotaur bellowed in rage and picked up the car by the torn roof. He raised it above his head and threw it down the road. It slammed into the wet asphalt and skidded in a shower of sparks for about half a mile before coming to a stop. The gas tank exploded. Naruto shrugged and pulled the pin from the smoke bomb, throwing it at the Minotaur's feet. The grenade exploded, releasing a green smoke. The bullman bellowed in rage, now enveloped in a foul mixture of fart-like odor, leftover food, and animal excrement. Naruto rushed towards the bullman, swiftly slicing off his horns. He then delivered a powerful kick to the Minotaur's chest, causing the bullman to skid down the road. Acting quickly, Naruto put his hands into a ram seal, Mokuton. Sashiki no Jutsu wood-style cutting springs jutsu, summoning his wood-style jutsu, Naruto manipulated multiple wood spikes that emerged from the Minotaur's back. The bullman vanished in a shimmer of golden dust. Naruto swiftly retrieved the horns and rushed up the hill, determined to catch up with Percy, Sally, and the clone. "Come on, Mom," Percy cried out hysterically as he watched his mother standing outside the barrier. "Percy, I can't get in," his mother said sadly. "What's going on here?" Naruto asked as he approached them from behind. "Naruto." Percy cried out happily as he saw his blonde friend. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't get in," Sally said sadly. Naruto looked at her for a moment before saying, "I, Naruto Uzumaki, give you permission to enter camp." Thunder shook the hillside. Suddenly, Sally stumbled past the barrier. Sally hugged Percy tightly, as if she thought he would disappear if she let go. She looked at Naruto with wondering eyes, silently thanking him. Looking up, they saw the familiar face of Mr. Brunner, who gave them a serious look. Next to him stood a very cute blonde girl. One of them has to be, they have to, she muttered. Silence. Annabeth, Mr. Brunner said. They're still conscious. Bring them inside. Yes, yes. Now, are you gonna help us or not? Came Naruto's sarcastic reply. He couldn't help it, he was dead tired and they were talking right in front of him. Going inside, Naruto helped the girl named Annabeth put Percy and Grover in different cots in the room. My name is Annabeth Chase, by the way, she introduced herself while looking at his red flaming eyes in fascination. Cool, I guess. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said as he lay down on one of the cots. If you excuse me, I'm tired and sleep would be nice. With that, he drifted into the realm of Morpheus and snored loudly. It still never ceases to amaze me, Mr. Brunner said, making the girl jump and Sally giggle. Which one? She asked. All three. They protected each other in school, though something seems different about Naruto. Something very powerful indeed. He replied. Naruto woke up abruptly, bolting up in his bed and startling Annabeth for a moment. Ah. Don't do that. She exclaimed. Sorry, he said, scratching the back of his neck. He unsealed the horn and looked at Percy, who was still unconscious. He then turned to Annabeth and asked, anyway, where is Ms. Jackson? She is staying at Hermes' cabin for now, Mr. Brunner said as he walked in. Naruto smiled at the teacher. Hey Mr. Brunner, he said with a slight wave, causing the two of them to sweat drop at his laid-back attitude. Mr. Brunner chuckled a bit. Naruto, here I am called Chiron. Naruto looked confused for a moment before he connected the dots. Holy shit, this is Chiron, the trainer of heroes. He thought to himself, activating his Rin Sharingan. This startled Annabeth and Chiron. He noticed that Chiron's wheelchair had an energy around it. I assume your wheelchair hides your horse ass, eh? He stated bluntly, making Chiron's eyebrow twitch and Annabeth giggle. Chiron sighed before nodding. Well, that explains it. So, how long was I out? Just last night. You shouldn't even be up, Annabeth said, frowning slightly at him. Naruto shrugged. Meh, I've always been a fast healer. Annabeth looked at him curiously, while Chiron looked thoughtful. Maybe you could be a child of Apollo, since his children can always heal themselves, Chiron guessed. He shrugged again. Yeah, it's too early to tell. Annabeth and Chiron nodded at that, while on the inside, Naruto was laughing. A child of Apollo. Sure, when he was a kid, he looked a lot like Apollo, except that his hair was a more golden color and his eyes were sapphire, while Apollo had sandy hair and normal blue eyes. Annabeth, could you please get some ambrosia and nectar? It should help him recover faster, Chiron told her as the girl nodded and left to do as he asked. Oh, I almost forgot. I kept this for you, Chiron said, handing him his Kusanagi sword. Thanks. He said as he put the sword on his back. Annabeth then walked back in, carrying a bowl of golden liquid. Naruto took it from her and stared at it for a moment before taking a sip. Ow, maybe he shouldn't have done that. It tasted as if Amaterasu's flame had been put in his mouth. He spit it out and screamed, water. Water. What the hell did you give me? Chiron and Annabeth looked at him in shock. He told Annabeth to get normal water. After a while, Annabeth came back in and gave him regular water. He took it and drank as if he hadn't had a drink in months. So you're immortal, Chiron said, still shocked at this revelation. Yeah, I'm immortal, he said as he panted. Well, this is shocking, but if so, how did you even get into camp? Zeus created a barrier so that monsters and mortals can't get in, Chiron said. He shrugged. Maybe because I'm a sage. He said uncertainly. His father had told him that while he was their son, he was still immortal. Sooner or later, he was going to be a god, but they didn't know when. They told him that thanks to his sage training, he could be inside camp half-blood. You're a sage? Annabeth asked curiously, excited to know how a sage harnessed nature energy. A sage is very rare these days. Could you show me, Mr. Uzumaki? Chiron muttered and then asked him. Well, I have two sage modes. One is nature energy, and the second is wood sage. Which one do you want to see first? He asked. The nature one first, please. Naruto nodded and then sat cross-legged, like the toads had taught him. He sat so still they could mistake him for a statue. He took a deep breath and calmed his mind, ignoring and blocking everything around him. Chiron felt nature coursing through Naruto's body. He saw a fox kit running toward Naruto and sitting on his lap, nuzzling its muzzle against his stomach. But Naruto didn't even flinch from the contact. He noticed the flowers in the pot around them glowing happily. When Naruto opened his eyes, they were startled by his eyes. Instead of the normal red flame eyes, they now had a bar crossing them, and around his eyes, there was an orange hue. He smiled and petted the fox behind the ears as the fox purred happily at the attention he was giving them, making Annabeth coo at the cute scene. Naruto then cut the connection with nature and shooed the fox kids to go back with their mother, except for one that was on his lap. The kid gave him sad puppy fox eyes, making him sigh and put it on his head, making the fox yip happily. "Well, that is very impressive, Naruto. Now, can you show us wood sage?" Chiron requested. He nodded and then his eyes had black lining around them with a bull cross on his forehead. He hovered his hand above the flower and almost instantly, the flower bloomed more beautifully. Chiron and Annabeth watched it with wide eyes before Chiron snapped out of his shock. "So wood sage helps you get stronger with plants?" he asked, as Naruto nodded. Chiron then said, "Now I will have a camper show you the cabins later. You'll come back here when Percy wakes up, as I don't want to say this twice." "Fair enough," he said as he followed Chiron out. "Annabeth, please continue watching over Percy, please," Chiron said, while Annabeth pouted at not having a chance to know Naruto more. Once outside, Naruto raised a brow. This place was pretty big. He looked around and saw that the big pine tree was not far from them. He activated his eyes again and saw a soul in the tree. He shrugged, it could be a dryad. He looked at the cabins in a U-shaped arc. Chiron called out a girl, "Clarisse, come here, please." The girl turned and saw the guy who defeated the Minotaur, the one everyone was talking about. She smirked and made her way toward them. She had fair skin, brown eyes, and long, messy, pale brown hair. She had a strong but feminine build. She looked gruff and had the look of a fighter. "What?" came her response. "I would like it if you showed Naruto here around the cabins for a moment. I will probably have Annabeth show Percy around the camp later when the latter wakes up," Chiron said. "Fine, gotta welcome the newbie anyway," she said with an evil smirk. Naruto noticed and raised a brow before grinning deviously, but it went unnoticed except by Chiron, who shook his head in sympathy at the girl's fate. "Well, come on, brat," she called out, already walking ahead of him. He followed her all the way to the middle of the cabin's arc. "Okay, listen cause I'm gonna say this once. There are 12 cabins in all, each one representing the Greek gods they were made for. The kids live in there. Since you and the runt are new and haven't been claimed yet, you two are going to cabin 11, Hermes' cabin." Naruto nodded at that and smiled slightly at his kind-hearted brother for letting other kids stay at his cabin. "So, which one are you?" She pointed at cabin 5. "The God of War cabin." Naruto looked where she pointed and sweat dropped. His brother's cabin was scruffily painted with an angry red color, had barbed wire lining the roof and a stuffed boar's head on the doorway. The boar's eyes seemed to stare at whoever was walking by. With his activated Rin Sharingan, he also saw live landmines surrounding the entrance. With Naruto's sensitive hearing, he could hear rock music blaring from it at times. "Cool," he drawled with sarcasm in his voice. Clarisse didn't notice. "Right, now we've got other cabins. We've got Demeter, Dionysus, Athena, Apollo, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hera, Zeus, Artemis, and Poseidon," she said, pointing at each cabin. He looked at his father's cabin and sweat dropped. "A little bit excessive, Dad," he thought dryly. His father's cabin looked like a white marble box with heavy, white columns in the front. This cabin was the biggest and bulkiest of all the cabins. It had polished bronze doors that shimmered like a hologram, with lightning bolts streaked down them. He took a glance at his mother's cabin and nodded approvingly at how her cabin looked. His mother's cabin was made out of marble and shaped like a box. The cabin was more graceful than Zeus's cabin, with slimmer white columns garlanded with pomegranates and flowers. The walls were carved with images of her symbol, the peeps. He decided that when he was claimed, he would live in his mother's cabin rather than his father's. Though he was confused as to why his Aunt Hestia and Uncle Hades did not have a cabin. Sure, he knew that his aunt was no longer an Olympian as she gave her seat to his half-brother Dionysus, and Hades was not an Olympian. But his mother and Artemis also did not have an offspring demigod, and they were merely honorary cabins. So why didn't Hestia and Hades have honorary cabins? He shook his head. All this thinking made his head hurt. "Now it's time to officially welcome you," Clarisse stated loudly, making a lot of people look toward them. She grimaced. Clarisse was breaking in another newbie, even though Naruto had helped kill the Minotaur. They still felt sorry for him. She quickly reacted and tried to grab his collar, but the keyword was tried. As soon as she rushed toward him, Naruto disappeared in a flurry of flower petals, eliciting shocked gasps from everyone. Then, a fast-growing tree coiled itself around Clarisse. She struggled to break free, and Naruto emerged from the tree trunk. Everyone looked at him with wide eyes in shock. Naruto just smiled at them and said, "Meijin. Jubaku Satsu, Gain Jutsu Sylvan Fetters Demon Illusion Tree Binding Death." Then, he clenched his hand into a fist with his arm beeped back and punched Clarisse's face. Everyone blinked rapidly before gasping as they saw Clarisse on the ground and Naruto standing in front of her. What the hell is that? It felt real, she thought with a shiver as she felt Naruto's punch pierce her head. It's a Gain Jutsu. She looked up and saw him smiling at her, which made her blush and look away. "Gain Jutsu?" she asked. He nodded. Yes, or in English, illusion, he stated, making her eyes widen. That is an illusion. What the hell? It felt real. She shouted at him. If that illusion made her feel like the real thing, she didn't want to know how strong he was. He nodded again and winked at her, making her blush deepen. Yes, and never, and I mean never, underestimate illusion, he said firmly while she nodded her head. He offered his hand and she grabbed it, pulling herself to her feet, and they walked to the big house. Arriving at the big house, Chiron noticed Naruto looking bored and Clarisse with a tomato blush on her face. He raised a brow at her. Well, it looks like Clarisse has a crush on the blonde, he mused as he saw the girl sneak glances at Naruto and blush here and there, while the said blonde was oblivious to the girl next to him. Back already, I see, he started. Since Percy won't be fully awake tomorrow, I would like for you to stay near here. Alright, I'm going to meet the cabin counselor if you wouldn't mind, he said. Before Chiron could reply, he disappeared in a flurry of flower petals with no trace of him left, as if he hadn't even been there in the first place. Chiron sighed as Clarisse walked away with a pink hue on her cheek. Naruto appeared in the middle of the arc of cabins, looking around and wondering who he should visit first. He decided to go to cabin 9, his brother Hephaestus's cabin. As he walked towards the cabin, he knocked on the door. The entrance resembled a vault door, circular and made of thick metal. The door opened with gears turning and smoke hissing, revealing a teenager about his age. She wore a tank top and a red bandana to tie back her dark hair, and she had cocoa brown skin. She coughed rapidly, waving her hand around to get the smoke away. When the smoke cleared, she looked at Naruto and blushed a bit at his handsome face. She seemed to be in a daze as she looked at his whisker mark in fascination. Naruto chuckled slightly, causing her to blush even harder at his laugh. Even his laugh is beautiful. Is he a son of Aphrodite? She thought. He waved his hand in front of her face, snapping her out of her daze. She blushed, embarrassed that she had been staring at him. Anyway, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. What's yours? He introduced himself, offering his hand to shake. She shyly took it. Nissa, my name is Nissa Barrera, she shook his hand along with his. So, Naruto, what brings you here? She asked. I was kind of hoping to meet my family, even though I haven't been claimed yet. Can I come in? He asked politely, while she nodded. Sure, come on, she took his hand and dragged him inside the cabin. They never noticed a gray-eyed blonde-haired female pouting and a certain daughter of Ares glaring at the back of Nissa's head in jealousy. Naruto looked around inside the cabin with curiosity shining in his eyes. It had shiny metal walls and metal slatted doors. He noticed that the cabin was unclean and messy, filled with junk. There was a tunnel underneath it. Naruto, this is Charles Beckendorf, our cabin counselor, she said, pointing at a huge 18-year-old African-American teen with a permanent scowl, muscles like a pro bowl player's, and hands like catcher's mitts, which were calloused from working in the armory all day. He had brown eyes and black hair. Ah, you're Naruto, right? The new camper who killed the Minotaur, Charles said with a kind smile while Naruto rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. Yeah, though I don't know why everyone makes a big deal out of it, he said, making Charles laugh and Nissa giggle. Naruto, to defeat a Minotaur alone, I might add, is an impressive feat itself, Charles praised, embarrassing Naruto even further, making Nissa giggle even harder. By the way, you fought, Naruto. Are you a shinobi? Charles asked curiously, making Nissa look at him. Naruto was surprised at this. Not even Chiron knew that he was a ninja. Yeah, how did you know? Well, I was helping Chiron around the big house and I saw Chiron holding your sword. I noticed that the sword is not something I've ever seen before. It's a long double-edged sword, and when Chiron almost accidentally cut a celestial bronze sword, your sword actually cut the bronze sword, as if it was butter, he said, amazed by the sword. Can I take a look at it? He said, almost pleadingly. Naruto shrugged. Sure, knock yourself out. He drew his sword from his back and gave it to Charles, who examined the sword in amazement. Does it have other abilities? He asked. Naruto nodded. The sword can quickly extend and retract its blade to attack from long distances, be controlled telekinetically according to my command, and cut through almost anything, he said matter-of-factly, making Charles and Nissa's jaws drop. Can you show it to me? Charles said, handing the blade back to Naruto. Naruto took the blade and pointed it at a practice dummy in the cabin. He mentally commanded the sword to extend, and the sword indeed extended. The sword extended about halfway across the room before the tip pierced the dummy's chest and shredded the whole dummy in the process, making Charles and Nissa's jaws drop even more, if that was possible. Naruto chuckled, seeing their amazed faces, and mentally commanded the sword to retract. The sword returned to its normal length. Naruto threw the sword at the next practice dummy, and the sword hit the dummy in the head. The head fell to the ground while the sword hovered above its headless body. Naruto mentally commanded the sword back to his hand, and the sword flew back. Naruto grabbed it before putting it back on his back. Naruto turned to look at them and laughed at the expressions on their faces. That seemed to snap them out of their daze, and they were looking at the sword in awe. Naruto yawned. Well, I better get some sleep. So, good evening, Nissa, Charles, he said. Wait, Naruto, Charles rushed forward and grabbed his arm, making him raise an eyebrow. Could you let me take a look at the sword for the night? He requested, surprising Naruto. There was no harm in it, Naruto mused. Sure, he said, making Charles and Nissa beam at him, though the latter was sad that Naruto wouldn't be staying with them any longer. But in return, I want a few favors, Charles, he said, making Charles nod his head vigorously. Sure, what do you want? He asked eagerly, wanting to examine the sword now. Naruto chuckled at Charles's enthusiasm. Can you add celestial bronze to my sword, but just the edge, though? He asked. Sure, came a happy reply. Naruto nodded as he gave his sword to Charles before heading out of the cabin and towards the big pine tree to take a nap. Naruto opened his eyes and immediately bolted, already standing. He looked around his surroundings. He was in a large white room with music that was annoying to his ears. He turned around and saw a teenager behind him, staring at him in shock. She had shoulder-length spiky black hair, electric blue eyes, and freckles across her nose. Naruto noted that she was built like a long-distance runner, lithe and strong, and she wore clothes that were somewhere between punk and goth: a black t-shirt, black tattered jeans, and a leather jacket. Naruto smiled at her, and she couldn't help but smile back. His smile was infectious. Well, hello there, name's Naruto Uzumaki, where are we? She took a deep breath and said, I'm Thalia, and we're in limbo. Limbo? Do you mean I'm actually in another realm? He asked, confused by the turn of events. You guessed as well as I did, Thalia shrugged. Naruto walked toward her and offered his hand. I assume you're a demigod. Thalia shook his hand as she sent lightning through his arm. However, she was shocked when the lightning coiled around his arm like a snake and dissipated in a dazzling display, making him look badass. Naruto chuckled at her expression. Sorry, but lightning and wind won't work on me. She looked at him. Are you a demigod of Zeus? She asked, scowling at the last part. He shook his head. No, Thalia, I'm a mortal with special powers. I arrived here yesterday with my friends Percy and Grover. Grover? She exclaimed, raising her voice. Yeah, you've heard of him, he said, taking a step back at the volume of her shout. He's the satyr who found me, Luke and Annabeth. How are they, by the way? Grover is trying to protect Percy with his crippled facade, but it didn't work for him. Annabeth seems to be doing okay from what I've seen, he replied with a shrug. And I haven't seen Luke yet. How long have you been in here, anyway? I think it's been more than 5 years, Naruto felt himself awaken. Well, I think I'm about to go now. Thalia hugged his arm. Can you visit me when you can? It's pretty boring here. She gave him wide, electric, baby blue eyes as she pouted at him. Naruto twitched at the sight before he sighed. Alright, I'll visit you at least in the afternoon. He smiled at her. Who the hell created that cursed puppy dog eyes technique anyway? Thalia beamed at him and gave him a kiss on the cheek before releasing him, blushing. Okay, I'll see you later, Naruto, she said shyly. Naruto blushed before he disappeared. Back in the normal world, Naruto realized it was already morning. Didn't think I was in limbo that long. He got up and headed back to the big house, where he saw Annabeth, Grover, Chiron, and his brother Dionysus sitting around a table. Well, I thought you disappeared, Chiron said, fully looking at him. Oh, I just fell asleep in my own dimension, he replied. Dimension? Annabeth blinked at him. It's complicated, he said, causing her to pout at the lack of information. Anyway, I would like you to meet these two, Chiron said. Naruto looked at the other person, a surfer-built individual with eyes all over his body, and the other one, his half-brother. These two are Argus and Mr. D, respectively. Naruto nodded, while Mr. D looked at him and chuckled. Well, I didn't expect you to be here, brother, he said, causing Grover, Annabeth, and Chiron's eyes to widen in shock at what Mr. D had just said. Naruto chuckled. Coming from a man who has been punished to be here, Dionysus grumbled at the jab before resuming his game. So, Grover, how are you feeling? Naruto turned his head to look at Grover. That brought Grover out of his shock. Better, but it still sucked that I was of no use. I'm sure you'll get another chance in the future, Grover, he smiled at Grover, who smiled back. He couldn't help but believe Naruto's words. A while later, Percy woke up and Grover took him aside to talk for a bit. When they returned, things got interesting. Percy looked toward the end of the porch where everyone was gathered and gasped. He saw Mr. Brunner standing there. Next to him was a portly man playing a game with the others. The blonde girl was leaning on the porch railing, eating popcorn-flavored pudding, and Naruto was drinking sake while the portly man glared at him jealously. Mr. Brunner? Percy cried out. The Latin teacher turned and smiled at him, a mischievous glint in his eyes that Percy recognized from their classes, like when he pulled a pop quiz and made all the multiple choice answers B. "Ah, good, Percy," he said. "Now we have 4 for Pinochle." He offered Percy a chair to the right of Mr. D, who looked at him with bloodshot eyes and let out a great sigh. "Oh, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. Now don't expect me to be glad to see you." Naruto sighed at his half-blood brother's grumpy remark. Thanks," Percy scooted a little farther away from him. If there was one thing he had learned from living with Gabe, it was how to tell when an adult had been hitting the happy juices. If Mr. D was a stranger to alcohol, he would be a satyr. "Annabeth," Mr. Brunner called to the blonde girl. She stepped forward and Mr. Brunner introduced them. "This young lady nursed you back to health, Percy. Annabeth, dear, why don't you go check on Percy's bunk? We'll be putting him, along with Naruto, in cabin 11 for now." Annabeth nodded. "Sure, Chiron." While Percy was checking her out, not in a perverted way, he noted that she had long curly blonde hair like a princess. However, her stormy gray eyes ruined the image. She was looking at him with a calculating gaze, as if she had chosen a target in the distance and was determined to march over and destroy it. "You drool when you sleep," she remarked before walking away. Percy was momentarily confused, but then Naruto burst out laughing like crazy. "Haha. You were checking her out, eh? No wonder she looked at you as if she wanted to destroy you. Wait, what about you? When did you wake up?" Percy snapped, a raging blush on his face, while Mr. D smirked. "I ate the blue cookie, Percy. That's how I'm healing so fast," he teased, and Percy pouted at the jab about his favorite food before perking his head up. "Wait, Naruto, where's my mother?" Percy asked frantically. Naruto waved off his concern. "Oh, don't worry. Your mother is in cabin 11 right now. I even sent a shadow clone to make sure she's okay." Percy smiled gratefully at his prank-loving, lightning-powered friend. He sometimes wondered if he had been blessed by a god to have a friend like him. "Anyway, do you work here, Mr. Brunner?" "Not Mr. Brunner," the ex-Latin teacher said. "I'm afraid that was a pseudonym. You may call me Chiron." "Okay," Percy said, feeling totally confused. He then turned to the director. "And Mr. D, does that stand for something?" Naruto's eyebrow twitched. He wondered if his blue food-loving friend had learned anything throughout this ordeal. Mr. D stopped shuffling the cards and looked at Percy as if he had belched loudly. "Young man, names are powerful things. You don't just go around using them for no reason." "Oh, right, sorry. I must say, Percy," Chiron broke in, "I'm glad to see you alive. It's been a long time since I've made a house call to a potential camper. I hate to think I wasted my time." "House call?" Percy questioned. "After my years at Yancey Academy instructing you, we have satyrs at most schools, of course, keeping a lookout. But Grover alerted me as soon as he found you. He sensed that you were something special, so I decided to come upstate. I convinced the other Latin teacher to take a leave of absence." This made Naruto snort loudly, while Chiron sent a suspicious glance at him. He knew what had happened to the other Latin teacher. Chiron had used the mist to manipulate the Latin teacher to leave. Thanks to his eyes, Naruto had seen energy surrounding the former Latin teacher, but he didn't react once he saw Chiron walk in and become the new Latin teacher for the rest of the year. Then we had Naruto transfer in, and we knew he was strong like you as well, though I was shocked that he cannot eat the food of the gods. Anyway, one powerful demigod is rare, and I'm glad we got you here safely." Percy tried to remember the beginning of the school year. It seemed like so long ago. But he did have a fuzzy memory of the first Latin teacher before he mysteriously disappeared and Mr. Brunner came into class. Naruto transferred in, and things weren't that bad. "You came to Yancey just to teach me?" Percy asked. Chiron nodded. "Honestly, I wasn't sure about you at first. We contacted your mother to let her know we were keeping an eye on you, just in case you were ready for Camp Half-Blood. But you still had so much to learn. Nevertheless, you made it here alive, and that's always the first step." "Well, I got help from Naruto." Percy winced a bit at the memory of the mini-training session Naruto had given him. "We know, and I'm glad you both made it in one piece." "Grover," Mr. D said impatiently, "are you playing or not?" "Yes, sir." Grover trembled as he took the fourth chair. Though Percy couldn't figure out why Grover should be afraid of a pudgy little man in a tiger print Hawaiian shirt. "Do you know how to play Pinochle?" Mr. D eyed him suspiciously. Of course, he knew Naruto didn't know how to play, yet he still had a winning streak. How did he know? He saw Naruto's smirking face. "Thank you, Nike," he silently prayed to the goddess of victory, grateful for her blessing of luck. He still remembered the day he first met her. Flashback. Naruto wandered through Olympus after having breakfast with his family. He was looking for Athena's temple, since his father had told him to go there for an examination. The reason was that, lately, after a spar with Artemis and Apollo, Artemis accidentally bit his neck. How she managed to do that, they never knew. Apollo laughed like a madman and teased his lil sis, giving their new brother a hickey. This made Artemis blush madly at the jab. She chased Apollo through Olympus, threatening to kill him if he ever let this accident spread through Olympus. Meanwhile, the twin archers played catch with Apollo. Naruto wiped his neck where the mark should have been. Instead of normal red blood, it was mixed with some golden liquid. He went to his mother's temple for answers, and when he told his mother about it, she squealed in joy for 2 reasons. First, her son was becoming an Olympian, and second, her husband's daughter had given her son a hickey. Meaning Artemis had a crush on Naruto and marked him as her own. Naruto just sweat-dropped at his mother's reaction. Just as he was about to turn left, he was tackled to the ground by a dark-haired missile. He looked down and saw a woman snuggling against him. She was a tall and beautiful goddess, wearing a glittering sleeveless dress with her dark hair braided and adorned with a gilded laurel wreath. Her expression was wide-eyed and a little crazy. She had a gold-tipped spear strapped to her waist and wings of polished gold that glittered brightly. Hey, miss, are you okay?" Naruto politely asked but was taken aback by her wide-eyed expression. She was smelling him furiously and even trying to lick him at times. "Why are you so sweet?" she panted as she continued smelling him, trying to remember his scent and appearance. After the Prince of Olympus returned home, she couldn't stop looking in his direction. She didn't know why, but she quickly became addicted and obsessed with him. "Okay, do you mind letting me go? I have an exam to do." He tried to gently push her off, but her grip on him only tightened even more. "No." "What? Why not?" "Because you're cute." Naruto just stared at her. Okay, this was getting awkward. He didn't know how to respond to her advances, so he marched toward Athena's temple to get his examination. Once he arrived, he was confused to see Athena glaring coldly at the woman. He looked into her eyes and saw jealousy. Okay, this was getting freaky. As Athena pried the woman off him and forcefully threw her out of the temple, he saw the woman wink at him and make a kissing motion before the temple door closed. Flashback end. "I'm afraid not." "I'm afraid not, sir," Mr. D corrected him. "Sir?" Percy replied. His liking for the camp director was diminishing. "Well," Mr. D replied, "it is along with gladiator fighting and Pac-Man. One of the greatest games invented by humans. I expect all civilized young men to know the rules." "I'm sure the boy can learn," Chiron said. "Please," Percy said, "what is this place? What am I doing here, Mr. Chiron? Why would you go to Yancy Academy just to teach me?" Mr. D snorted. "I asked the same question." The camp director dealt the cards, and Grover flinched every time one landed in his pile. Chiron smiled sympathetically at Percy, the way he used to in Latin class, as if to let Percy know that, no matter what his average was, he was his star student. He expected Percy to have the right answer. "Percy," he said, "did your mother tell you nothing?" She said. Percy remembered her sad eyes looking out over the sea. "She told me she was afraid to send me here, even though my father wanted her to. She said once I was here, I probably couldn't leave. She wanted to keep me close to her." "Typical," Mr. D said. "That's how they usually get killed." He was cut off by Naruto, who released Madara's godly enhanced chakra, making all of them choke on their own spit. His eyes had a ripple with Tomo patterns in them. "Finish that sentence, Dionysus." Mr. D knew his brother was pissed if he used his full name, "and your punishment in the camp isn't the only thing you'll receive," he said, deadly serious. Mr. D broke out in a sweat and said shakily, "And anyway, young man, are you bidding or not?" "What?" Percy asked. Chiron patiently explained how to bid in Pinnacle, while Mr. D still sweated and Naruto glared at him with his godly eyes. "I'm afraid there's too much to tell," Chiron said. "I'm afraid our usual orientation film won't be sufficient." "Orientation film?" Percy asked and then rounded on Naruto, who was still glaring at Mr. D. "And you didn't even look surprised at this stuff at all." Naruto cut off his glaring at Mr. D, who released a relieved sigh. "Percy, in my time as a ninja, I have seen a lot of weird shit. I have seen a sword coming out of a man's stomach through his mouth, and that is disgusting. I have seen a man who appeared to be immortal and loved to spread carnage in Jashin's name. I have seen a hybrid man and shark combination. Hell, I'm not even from this world, and seeing all of this isn't so surprising," he told Percy, who had a green face at the weird things Naruto just told him. "Good God, who the hell puts a sword in their stomach?" Chiron looked disturbed by this information. "Well, Percy," Chiron started, "you know your friend Grover, a satyr. You know," he pointed at the shoebox Percy was holding, "that you have seen the Minotaur. What you may not know is that great powers are at work in your life. The gods, the forces you called Greek gods, are very much alive." Percy stared at the others around the table. He waited for somebody to yell not, but all he got was Mr. D yelling, "Oh, a royal marriage trick. He cackled as he tallied up his points, and Naruto had a cold look on his face. Mr. D, Grover timidly asked, if you're not going to drink it, can I have your Diet Coke can? Naruto just grabbed the can and gave it to his friend, who was looking at him astounded that he just took the can. Naruto glared at Mr. D, who nodded his head rapidly. Grover took it and chewed it mournfully. Wait, Percy said to Chiron. You mean there are such things as gods? Well now, Chiron said. God, capital G, that's a different matter altogether. We shouldn't deal with the metaphysical. Metaphysical? But you were just talking about. Ah, gods, plural, as in beings that control the forces of nature and human endeavors. The immortal gods of. And goddesses, Naruto cut in helpfully. Chiron chuckled. Yes, Naruto, and goddesses of Olympus. That's a smaller matter. Smaller? Yes, quite. The gods we discussed in Latin class. Seeing this, Naruto intervened. Percy, remember the bloodlines I told you about? Percy nodded. Well, think of that along with the Greek mythology we learned in class and we've got something very powerful living. Percy's eyes widened. You mean Zoo? Naruto slapped his hand over Percy's mouth before he could continue. Percy, like your mother said, names are powerful, he reminded him and pulled his hand back. But they're stories, Percy said. They're myths to explain lightning and the seasons and stuff. They're what people believed before there was science. Science, Mr. D scoffed. And tell me, Jackson, Percy flinched when the man said his real name, what will people think of your science 2000 years from now? Mr. D continued. They will call it primitive mumbo-jumbo. That's what. Oh, I love mortals. They have absolutely no sense of perspective. They think they have come so far. And have they, Chiron? Look at this boy and tell me. Percy, Chiron said, you may choose to believe or not, but the fact is that immortal means immortal. Can you imagine that for a moment? Never dying, never fading, existing just as you are for all time. Naruto winced internally at that. Watching your loved ones die slowly from aging isn't something he wants, but sooner or later, he is going to be a god. He has no desire to be immortal, but apparently, he doesn't have a choice. You mean whether people believe in you or not? Percy asked. Exactly, Chiron said. If you were a god, how would you like being called a myth? An old story to explain lightning. What if I told you, Jackson, that someday people would call you a myth? Just created to explain why little boys can't get over losing their mothers. Naruto winced some more. People back in the elemental nations called the Sage of Six Paths a myth in the end. A war to fight your loved ones who once died and watching your comrades dying right in front of your own eyes. I wouldn't like it, but I don't believe in gods, Percy said, making Naruto grimace in pain. Oh, you better, Mr. D murmured. Before one of them incinerates you. Please, sir, he's had a rough day, Grover said. The lucky thing too, Mr. D grumbled, playing his cards. Bad enough I'm confined to this job, working with those who don't even believe. He waved his hand, and a goblet appeared on the table, as if the sunlight had momentarily bent and woven the air into glass. The goblet was filled with red wine. Mr. D, Chiron warned, your restrictions. Mr. D looked at the glass in feigned surprise. Dear me, he looked at the sky and yelled, old habits, sorry. More thunder boomed. Naruto snatched the glass and drank from it, making his brother's eyebrow twitch, and Chiron looked shocked at the bold move. You do know demigods cannot drink alcohol, right? Dionysus smirked at him in triumph for all the pranks he had played on him. Naruto just smirked back. Well, yes, Dionysus, but you forget one thing, he leaned forward and stared at Mr. D intensely, making him sweat a bit. I'm a mortal, not a demigod, so the rules don't apply to me. Mr. D just stared at him in shock before pouting, while Naruto teasingly drank the wine in front of him and sighed dramatically. Ah, that is one sweet, sweet wine. Dionysus couldn't help but nod at that. Chiron winked. Mr. D offended his father a while back, took a fancy to a wood nymph who had been declared off limits, Naruto scowled at that. The wood nymph, Percy repeated, staring at the goblet in Naruto's hand, as if it were from outer space. Yes, Mr. D confessed, father loves to punish me. The first time, prohibition, ghastly, absolutely horrid 10 years. The second time, well, she really was pretty, and I couldn't get away. The second time he sent me here, Half-Blood Hill, summer camp for brats like you. Be a better influence, he told me, working with youths rather than tearing them down. Ha. Absolutely unfair. Mr. D sounded like a 6-year-old, pouting like a little kid. Well, if you keep your beep in your pants, maybe you won't be here in the first place, Naruto said, making Dionysus look away in shame. Immortales, Chiron, Mr. D said, I thought you taught this boy the basics. My father is Zeus, of course. Percy went through the D names he had learned about and found one that matched Mr. D, though he was not as subtle as his friend. You're Dionysus, he said, the god of wine. Mr. D rolled his eyes. What do they say these days, Grover? What do the children say? Well, duh. Yes, Mr. D, Grover replied. Then, well, UbberFox. Did you think I was Aphrodite, perhaps? Mr. D asked, irritated, while Naruto winced for Dionysus. Poor bastard, he would probably get a curse if she heard him say that. Your god, Percy repeated, unable to comprehend it. Mr. D turned to look at Percy straight on. He saw a kind of purplish fire in his eyes. Unbeknownst to Mr. D, Naruto's red flaming eyes changed into Rin Sharingan, and he blocked the illusion Dionysus was trying to show Percy. Would you like to test me, child? Mr. D asked quietly. What? Percy asked, confused. Test him? What? Dionysus's eyes twitched. He was about to snap his fingers and change this insolent brat into a dolphin until. Crunch. Mr. D held his broken hand in pain, looking at his half-brother and shivering at the look he was giving him. Did Naruto gain a deadly glare from his mother Hera and grandmother Ray? Fetch the boy, Dionysus, he said demonically, making Dionysus sweat. And I'll kill you, god or not, you will die, understand? Mr. D nodded rapidly while the others were shocked that he injured the god. Percy, let's take a walk, shall we? Naruto smiled warmly at Percy, making the boy dumbly nod. Well, this is interesting, Chiron thought as he watched the camp director's broken hand heal itself at a fast speed. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.